Hey guys, it's Karim for the series premiere of the new Starz show Counterpart. This is Season 1, Episode 1, The Crossing. And what Counterpart is essentially about is we center on the character of Howard Silk, who works in this sort of bureaucratic United Agents agency, and basically he ends up going to his boss to finally get some answers, and he learns a surprising truth where he's basically worked for nearly 3 decades and quickly starts to learn that there might be another version of himself that might actually be able to help him out in a certain situation I'll talk about in a little bit. So, Counterpart in general, to be honest with you, I really did not know too much going into the show. All I knew is that it starred J.K. Simmons, and that it was a sci-fi show, and that's really all I needed to know. I wanted to go into the show fairly blind, to be honest with you. I really did not want to know too much, like I said, going into it. And I really think that this is a good thing that Starz has a show right now. Starz is kind of in a weird sort of place at the moment. American Gods is kind of in hot water. It might be falling apart. I mean, obviously Brian Fuller left, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. Outlander's not as good as he used to be, and Starz isn't as popular, I think, as they once were. So I think Counterpart is definitely the show they need right now, and I have to say, that is absolutely the case, because Counterpart is absolutely fantastic. I fucking loved this premiere. At least from this premiere, this has the potential to be one of the most uniquely different sci-fi shows we've seen in quite some time. I think this has tons of potential, but let's just get into it right now. So I really love the way this episode starts off. We start off in slow motion. We see glass falls like snow onto a sidewalk. There's a body of a man that falls with a thud. He has what appears to be a bullet hole in his chest, and his face is bloodied. Upstairs, there's a broken window. Fireworks explode over a city skyline. There's gunshots, sound of breaking glass, someone shouting 9 inside the room, and those sounds mix with the sound of the pyrotechnics outside, and we see the police side, who of course are the police. They arrive with shotguns and automatic weapons, and shouting in German, they surround front of the building. Bystanders are on the streets, some wearing gray cloth surgical masks. They watch as the officers examine the fallen body and enter, and I really do love the way this starts, because again, we're just completely thrown into this action. We don't know what the hell's going on here. All we know is that this is clearly a town full of chaos, and on the 14th floor, a team of riot officers breach a hotel room. They find a number of dead men. They find a woman in a short burgundy dress and silver heels cowering in the shower. She appears to have been crying. The police call all clear. A man who appears to be a detective enters the room. His partner follows shortly with a bag. He reports that he is gone, suggesting that they're tracking down a male and that the deal went wrong, suggesting they were tipped to the meeting prior. And inside the bag, there are bundles of euros. A $100 euro note is visible. Its markings match those of the real €100 notes, as well as visa slips with Office of Interchange, travel stamps, and the head detective gets rid of the riot officers while he and his partner remain with the women. And basically, the second officer describes the contents of the bag: visas, credentials, currency from the other side, and they speculate their target left in a hurry. So the head turns to the woman, questioning how Baldwin got away, and again describing his target as a man. So she's very non-responsive. She continues to cower. Giving up, he orders a subordinate to get her in the car and suggests that since she saw his face, they can then extract that information from her somehow. So again, we don't really know what this is all about. We don't know who Baldwin is, but there's already a lot of compelling stuff here. We don't know what those, why are there euros? Why are there just visas? What's really going on here? Again, we're completely left in the dark about this, and that element of mystery and surprise is really one of the strong points of this entire show, is, like I said, that idea. So the detective's cursing under his breath. He takes the bag down to the back of the building. He's dialing a number on what appears to be a clear slab of glass, but is apparently some sort of advanced smartphone. He explains the target's gone, defends their actions, and trying to move in quickly, suggesting that they are not police officers after all. His partner then leads a stumbling woman to the back driver's side door of what appears to be a dark gray Mercedes-Benz G-Class SUV. She nearly collapses to the street, but he catches the detective, assures the person on the phone that their target is not going anywhere because they have the bag with the visas and money. He says that he can't get to their world, and as the man helps the woman described as the hooker in the bathroom up from her stumble, she steals the knife from his belt, cuts his throat with a single stroke. He collapses to his hands and knees. He's bleeding out. He's clutching his throat. He tries to speak, but he can't. And ending his call, the detective hears the hammer cock on a handgun. He turns slowly to find the hooker from the bathroom, holding what appears to be a Glock in both of her hands with a finger on the trigger. The fireworks are still going off. The woman looks up to time her shots. She fires, and a colorful expression over her drowns out the noise. The detective is shot in the middle of the forehead and falls dead. She removes her black wig, revealing a short, almost shaved haircut underneath, so clearly she's undercover somehow. She stuffs the wig in the bag, moves off down the street, and like I said, this whole opening I thought was incredibly well done. We don't know what's going on here, and that unknowing sense, really does, like I said, heighten the tension throughout this whole episode. So we're then introduced to the character of Howard Silk. He's placed in a stone during a game of Go in a riverfront cafe, and his companion, known as Andre, points out that Howard is about to lose the game. Howard claims he's trying to teach his friend, who complains that Howard is just too nice, and the game always ends with him losing. Howard stands to leave, promising that he will win next time, and Andre says that he sometimes feels Howard just lets him win. So the older man smiles and says that there wouldn't be a lesson in that. He doffs his hat and coat, grabs his briefcase, and then leaves. So he stands alone, surrounded by people on a train platform, and on the train he reads Einstein on Peace while standing in the middle of the car. And Howard is then dwarfed by the massive Office of Interchange building in Berlin, walls into work. Inside, he enters his code into the keypad, is allowed through the turnstile under the watchful eyes of an armed security officer in a maroon beret. He turns in his smartphone, is handed a claim ticket in exchange. So in a locker room, he removes his watch, ring, glasses, all his clothing, changes into a suit provided for him. He's alone, surrounded by coworkers who chatter away in what sounds like German, and I really love the way this is set up. I mean, just the way that you can tell how much of an outsider he is. He's the only one who's not German here. I mean, he clearly is very out of place, within the society. So he joins a line of workers all dressed identically in a gray suit, white shirt, maroon tie, and each in turn hand over a card to a woman at a desk, signs onto a piece of paper provided. The card is stamped and then inserted into a built-in pocket on the side of the briefcase, and the card label in German as interface assignment is stamped with Office of Interchange in English. The translation says Austrian, I don't know how you pronounce that honestly, or literally exchange service is what that means, in addition to Howard's name and the date, April 14th, 2018. It lists 1683 under an undecipherable heading, 3242 under room number, 18A under luggage number, and the initials SL under the heading signature. So Howard passes through another security checkpoint, again mannered by the armed officers in maroon berets. He enters a long stone corridor with his fellow workers. One side of the corridor is made up of a series of doors. Each has a pair of lights near the handle. The red lights are showing as Howard takes his place in front of one of the doors alongside the others, and once everyone's lined up, a buzzer then sounds, the lights on the door frame turn green, the doors pop open, the man each enter a different door, and Howard then follows a few steps behind. So the room's tiny, there's gray concrete walls with a window set in one, and basically behind the window is an identical room, which seems very much like some prison visitation cubes where glass separates visitor from the inmate, and a desk and chair often built into the wall in front of a window, a lamp, letter opener, and pencils sit on a tray on the desk, and Howard places his briefcase on the desk and a security camera watches from the transom window behind him. He sits waiting for 5 seconds, and another man enters on the other side of the glass. He too places his case on the desk and then sits down. So he retrieves the letter opener, slices through the 2 blue security stickers along with the opening of the briefcase and opens it. His counterpart on the other side matches his actions, and Howard then removes the case's contents, which are 3 sealed manila envelopes. He then closes and places the case to the side, and the man on the other side holds up a blue card that reads, "I took the long way to work today," and Howard then shuffles through the envelope until he finds one with the same phrase he just heard printed on a thin white label on the front. He uses the letter opener to cut through another security sticker. The stickers on each envelope say 3242, which again was the same number that was written under the heading room allocation on the card. So from the envelope, Howard removes what appears to be two connected sheets from a dot matrix printer, and he tears neatly at the perforation. He placed the sheet in front of him, and basically Howard says how the weather was too hot for writing and pencils a check mark on one of the pages. The other man speaks through a speaker, says that it never cools off at this time of year. Howard replies that his mother loves the winter, but she lives in the south, and makes another check, and the man says that his is partial to spring. Howard says flowers in the air. He mentions something about orchards. Again, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, but according to the page, this phrase is designed to end the exchange. Like, it's supposed to end here, but as Howard is packing up his materials, he notices that his counterpart has a smudge on his tie and points it out. Now, apparently, this breaches some protocol, and the man is surprised, and he frowns, touches the smudge, touches the finger to his tongue, and he exits the room. The door light switches from red to green, and again, I really love the way this set everything up. I thought this was definitely very interesting getting into Howard's character, and it only gets more interesting from here. So in the locker room, a coworker, Marcel, asks Howard about a meeting he scheduled, and he talks about how the girls are saying that he has a meeting upstairs, and he asks Howard if he's going for the strategy job and advises his friend not waste his time. So Howard ignores this advice and makes a joke about Marcel missing him if he gets the job, and he's then guided by a woman into another small stone room. She tells him to stand on a circle paint on the floor as the heavy double door in front of him cycles open, and inside is a standard open floor plan office with an eclectic mix of antique office technology. There are typewriters, shared desk space with early IBM-like desktop computers, dot matrix printers, a raised platform at the end of the room, and it holds what is apparently the only private office on the floor. So above the step up to this area is what appears to be a departure board with a split flap display. A number of office workers are busy with filing and other tasks, and Howard is then led into the private office and sits down in front of Peter Quayle. And this character is very intriguing. You know, where we end up going with this character in general, I'm very intrigued, but Howard offers his resume, but Peter says that they have it on the computer. He proceeds to pull it up on the monochrome monitor. It shows Howard's been in the office 29 years and worked his way up to interface, which is insane to think about. He's done this same exact thing for 30 years now, and nothing's really changed. And he then taunts his performance. Peter asks about Howard's wife. Howard says that she is improving, and Peter goes on about how much she is liked in the office, but says that he's actually never met her. So Howard attempts to turn the conversation back to his job performance, and Peter asks about and then cheerfully mocks the fact that Howard lives in the Wilmsdorf neighborhood of Berlin, and Howard again tries to get the meeting back on track, pointing out that he's been in interface for quite some time. Peter admits that Howard's one of the best and no one has ever had a complaint about him, and Howard then presses forward asking for the job in strategy. Peter says the post has been filled. He says that Howard is an interface man and finds no reason to upset the cart by giving them promotion. And Howard, again, he's trying, you can tell he's trying to get this promotion. He's trying to maybe be a little bit more, up in the ranks, but Peter clearly is not willing to do that. He just wants to keep Howard in that same position, but Peter interrupts and says that oversight notices not approved exchange with his counterpart about his smudged tie, which again is crazy to think about that this is all over a smudged tie, but he says that someone with Howard's experience should know better. Howard loses it. He says he's been coming to work for 30 years, but still doesn't know what they actually do at the Office of Interchange, and Peter shuts down the meeting, saying if it was going to happen for Howard, it would have already happened, and it's clear that that's not going to. So on his way out of the building, a coworker invites Howard to drinks to celebrate Marcel's promotion to strategy, and Howard begs off, saying that he has plans. So he then visits the Albert Schweitzer Krankenhaus, and he pauses at the nurse's station. A nurse smiles at him and removes a flower from a vase on the counter, and Howard replaces it with one from a bundle of flowers he brought with him. The nurse points out that the flowers are Alstromeries, I think that's how you pronounce it, which are her favorite, and Howard says that they're his wife's favorite too. So Howard's wife, Emily, we find out is actually comatose, and one machine breathes for her as another counts off her heartbeats with muted bleeps, and Howard then places the flowers in a vase. He's interrupted by his brother-in-law, Eric, and Emily has concussive trauma. After 6 weeks, Emily's family wants her moved to long-term care in England, and Eric leaves behind a set of papers he wants Howard to sign to facilitate the family taking custody. And you can tell that Howard's very reluctant, but he's kind of outnumbered, again, similar to his job, he kind of just has to go along with it, and Howard then settles in beside his wife's bed, he begins to read, and it's a very powerful scene. Again, we don't know much about the marriage between these two, but you can just tell by the look on Howard's face, how concerned he is, what this is really doing for him, and you're really hoping that Emily's going to be okay, and again, I thought they did a really good job of setting this up here. So when Howard returns to work the next morning, his code doesn't work at the first security checkpoint. He's ushered into a dark concrete room with large antique reel-to-reel magnetic tape recorders along one side. He's introduced by Ulrich, whom Howard says works for housekeeping. Ulrich then begins recording, starts to question Howard. He's interrupted by Peter, who says that Howard doesn't know a damn thing because he's simply nobody. So Ulrich leaves and Howard tries to get Peter to tell him what's going on. Peter says that someone has walked in from the other side, perhaps a defection, and Howard has no idea what he's talking about. So Peter ignores him, continues that usually such visitors are turned back, but this latest is different and refuses to speak to anyone but Howard. So Aldrich returns with a man in handcuffs and a black hood. Once the hood is removed, this is revealed to be himself. Yes, this is Howard from Dimension 2, essentially. And Howard's double is disappointed in what he sees in the other him, and surprised that his other has no idea what's up with the Office of Interchange. So it's clear that this D2 Howard is a lot more aware of what's actually going on, in this particular, job than the regular Howard does. So the D2 Howard explains he only has 12 minutes to get back. He offers his terms. No one besides the 4 people in the room should know about the arrangement. Aldrich questions why they should listen to him, and D2 Howard says if they don't listen to him, then people are just going to start dying. So there's a kill order out from his side targeting people on Dimension 1, which is Howard's side, and Aldrich suggests they take it to the 4th floor, but D2 Howard says the group may be compromised. Aldrich says there's no intelligence to confirm any of what he's saying, and D2 Howard counters that D1's intelligence is simply a shit show, and they can't at all, use him for that reason. He's just not smart enough. So Peter wants to know who's on the list, but D2 Howard refuses, saying he won't tell until he knows where they all stand. He plans to return tomorrow on a longer visa for courier duty, and he says they're going to need D1 Howard and suggests that Peter and Aldrich read him in on what's going on. So later in the traffic tunnel for the Office of Interchange, Howard and Peter are both freaking out. Peter says that nobody gets to meet their other. It just is unheard of. That's not something that usually happens, and Howard demands an explanation, and Peter tells him all about how the Cold War, there was an experiment, and, what really went down there, and how, someone went wrong. They opened up a passage directly beneath them. When they go through the door, you come out the other side. You're in another world identical to ours, same events, same experiences, and this building where they are now is called The Crossing, hence the title of this episode, which is actually really cool. I really like that we get this information, and again, because the fact that we didn't know about this, we are basically just as bewildered as Howard is here. I mean, he doesn't know how to really react to this. How would you react if you knew that there was another version of you, in this other side? I mean, it's just not really something we think about. But Howard points out that while his other looks like him, they are nothing alike. And I mean, yeah, we can already tell. So Peter explains that while the worlds were identical at first, they've diverged over time. He says that they now trade information and gather intelligence on the other side, but the whole thing is kept secret, and contact is supposed to be limited. Peter's unclear as to how many people outside the Office of Interchange might know about the crossing, and Aldrich joins them, explains that before he left, D2 Howard said one of the assassin's target is the D1 Emily Silk. So Aldrich says that they've put a watch on her, and over Howard's protesting and continued questioning, Peter assures him his wife will be safe, and then walks off. So Howard visits Emily again in the hospital. He replaces the single flower in the vase at the nurse's station, but does not speak. He sits with Emily as the machine beeps along with her heart, and in a nightclub apparently called Barbone, men in various stages of undress dance to a heavy techno-industrial beat. Marcel from the Office of Interchange notices a young man staring at him. He walks up to order a drink at the bar. The man motions for Marcel to follow him, and he does. They go down this narrow red light corridor, and the man disappears behind the door, and when Marcel reaches it, he finds it locked. So Baldwin steps from her position at the end of the hallway and calls his name. He turns toward her. She shoots him in the forehead. She steps closer, fires 2 more shots into his body, and again, this character continues to be endlessly compelling. I don't really know where they're going with her, and definitely, like I said, is one of the most intriguing parts of this entire premiere. But Howard's then playing Go with Andre the following morning. He questions his friend on nature versus nurture, and wonders aloud if we are simply the sum of our choices. And Andre disagrees, saying that we are who we are, and the game only ends one way. So Howard says that one problem is that he's simply too young. He hasn't lived enough to kind of go through what Howard has. So D2 Howard returns to the crossing. There are two baklava wearing armed guards on his side in what looks like the custom areas at a small train station. He passes through a sliding door, is met with the familiar Dimension 1 maroon berets, and they ask the purpose of his visit. He explains that he has the embassy pouch and is on a 12-hour visa. They remove a bottle of what appears to be vodka from his bag, and Howard explains that it's better on his side. They stamp the visa and then allow him through. So he's met by Ulrich and Peter, driven to D1 Howard's apartment, and D1 Howard prepares coffee while the others discuss Baldwin. She's apparently killed several people in Dimension 2, so D2 Howard doesn't know why she targeted Marcel, and he explains that there's infighting in Dimension 2. Aldrich says he's heard a few things about it, and D2 Howard says that there's a faction maybe trying a takeover, and he says it's unclear who is involved, but they are hardline ideologicals who don't care much for diplomacy with Dimension 1. So D1 Howard stands awkwardly by unable to participate in the conversation, again because he doesn't know any of this stuff. D2 Howard is far more knowledgeable than the Howard we've come to know. So D2 Howard says that things are contentious with lots of defection talking aside of the crossing, while at the same time people have been disappearing. He says he doesn't know why Baldwin is targeting certain people, but he says he knows that it's not random. There's clearly a reason why they're going after these specific people. So he says they may be going after D1 Emily to send D2 a message, and he claims that his Emily died of cancer, and therefore Baldwin's masters had to cross over to find her counterpart. So D2 Howard explains that he's officially designated 4C, which on his side is diplomacy. In reality, he claims to be Section 2, and he says he spent his career building the D2 clandestine operational network in Dimension 1, and D2 Howard asks about the D1 Emily, thinking that she might be at work, and D1 Howard explains the accident. He says 6 weeks ago she was crossing a street when a distracted driver came out of nowhere. Howard says that she is in a coma, and over the objections of D1 Howard, they come with a plan to use Emily as bait to lure Baldwin into a trap. So D2 Howard wants to replace his counterpart. He wants to know every step in his routine in the hospital because he says that Baldwin will have been watching and the slightest deviation could cause her to bolt. So as they leave, Peter tells Aldrich to kill D2 Howard if he makes one left instead of a right. So clearly they do not trust this guy. They think that, he definitely is not really on his side. And the two Howards are left to get acquainted. They learn about their differences. D2 dresses in his counterpart's clothes, including a favorite tie he lost on his side years ago, and D1 says that he can keep it. So D1 lays out his routine. He goes straight up to her floor and says hello to the nurses. He then reads to Emily poetry mostly. He meets Walt Whitman and Maria Reich by name, and he offers D2 some funnel cake because he thinks it tastes similar to something he had when he was a kid in Maine, and D2 can't have any because he has high cholesterol. So D1 Howard's unaware if he shares this trait. D1 presses him on what kind of music he listens to, which we find out that he doesn't. What's his favorite food, the similarities they share, and how they ended up so different. And D2 says that people have driven themselves crazy trying to chart how individuals in the two dimensions diverge. So it's clear that the difference between D1 Howard and D2, this is a very common occurrence. All of the Dimension 1 Dimension 2 counterparts, they're very different. So again, it's not just Howard, and D2 wants to know how come D1 never got promoted, but his counterpart says that he really doesn't know. So D2 says a genetics, child, and the rest of it don't matter because people are helpless to their experience. He says the difference between the two Howards could be a single moment, one little thing that went wrong. So D2 asks if D1 stays in touch with Emily's family. They discuss what and asks her brother Eric. In Dimension 1, Eric tried to talk Emily out of the wedding. In Dimension 2, they actually, Howard and Emily elope. So apparently the D1 couple wed more quickly, which is 28 years ago in October, shortly after they met, whereas the D2 version had a much longer courtship. So D1 admits that he couldn't sleep with the prospect that another version of Emily might be uninjured in the other dimension. He's devastated that this is apparently not the case. He says it's too early to tell if his Emily will survive. D2 says that he wasn't perfect in his marriage, and you know, we still don't know if that's true about D1. We don't know if they had a perfect marriage. I mean, we haven't really heard otherwise, so I think we're kind of led to believe that. But again, this is definitely a very intriguing point. I'm interested in seeing really what happened here. So Ulrich arrives and the plan is set in motion. They drive to the hospital. D1 Howard remembers he needs to buy flowers and has Ulrich pull over at a florist shop. And at the hospital, both Howards are outfitted with in-ear comms for communication, with the other agents hidden at various locations around the location. And Peter explains that they have 2 men on every exit. Emily's in room 322 actually, and D2 Howard asks for a gun. Ulrich obliged with the warning that their guards never down. D1 Howard quickly adds that the nurse on D2 will be Talia, and D2 Howard orders Ulrich to keep his counterpart out of sight around the back of the hospital. D2 Howard then enters the hospital. Talia arrives, removes a flower from the vase as always, but doesn't stop to give her one from the bundle that he carries. He makes it into Emily's room, closes the door, holds her hand. Eric arrives in front of the hospital. All the agents go on high alert. D1 Howard hears a description, tells him to stand down. He briefs him on the plan to move Emily to England and the papers left in the room earlier. So D2 Howard refuses to sign the papers, verbally cuts Eric in two, explains he will never let Emily go. Baldwin then shows up outside, and you can tell this is exactly what D1 is wanting to say to Eric, but again, he just doesn't have that courage and I think that ballsiness that D2 Howard really does have. He doesn't really have that in him yet. So D2 Howard pulls his gun, tries his best to explain quickly to a terrified Eric that someone is heading up to kill his sister. He orders him to sit and stay. D2 Howard sets himself up in the doorway to one of the other patient rooms on the same floor. He waits for Baldwin. She arrives on the floor and notices that there is no flower in the vase and stops. She removes her shoes, turns around to run. Talia asks if she can help her. Baldwin begins running with D2 Howard giving chase. Baldwin fires at the man and the nurses. She turns to run and he gives chase, and Peter then runs toward the hospital. Ulrich handcuffs D1 Howard to the car seat before he too heads inside, and Baldwin manages to evade the agents, jumps out a second floor window, lands on the ground below, takes out the agents posted there, and manages to make it to the back of the hospital. There she spots D1 Howard in the car and raises her gun to fire. Baldwin's then struck in the face by a shot. D2 Howard is up above them. He continues firing but is apparently out of ammunition. Baldwin escapes on foot down the street. D1 Howard then rushes upstairs to check on Emily. He finds Eric in her room, tells him to leave the hospital and Berlin, and it's a great moment because, again, you can tell that he's been waiting a long time to say this to Eric, and you can see that D2 is really giving him that courage. So D2 returns to the Office of Interchange. He explains to Peter the Baldwin will try again. He says he'll get another visa in 24 hours and return. He says Peter should keep watching, that they will need D1 Howard again very soon. So basically, this is definitely not the end of their team up. We can tell that this is definitely going to happen again. So on the drive home, Peter explains that there's usually a whole process that goes along with learning about the other side, including mental health professionals and others. And once they arrive at Howard's house, he demands a promotion and real access operational knowledge. Peter says it doesn't work like that. Howard counters that they need him now, so they've got to figure it out. So at the same time, the Dimension 2 version of Howard passes through customs again, and out the other side, he emerges on the street in Berlin with a much altered skyline, makes his way to the bar, and we see none other than his wife Emily. She is very much alive. She questions why he's been visiting Dimension 1 so much of late, and we definitely get the sense that there is a lot that he is hiding from his counterparts, and that is the way this episode ends. So, yeah, guys, there's definitely a lot of stuff to get into here, but we're just getting into starting off with the cast. And right off the bat, that is definitely one of the most impressive elements, I think, of this entire premiere. Just the cast in general, I think everyone really did a great job. Let's first talk about J.K. Simmons as Howard Silk, who is absolutely phenomenal in this role. I mean, pulling off this role is no easy feat, especially because of the fact that he's playing two completely different characters. But not only does he do that, he's already given them so much depth and so much development. Howard, the first Howard, for example, we know that this is a guy who clearly has a lot of questions and has a lot of answers, but he doesn't really have the courage to answer them. We can tell he's getting frustrated. He's tired of being kept out of the loop of these things, and he really wants these answers. D2 Howard, on the other hand, is much more direct, and does have that courage and clearly has gone through a very different experience than, his other self has. So I really did love the contrast in these two. Some of the best scenes in the episode are just seeing these two work together. You would almost think that they are different actors. That's how good J.K. Simmons really is in this role. I mean, sure, they look exactly the same, but you forget that this is J.K. Simmons in both of these roles, and he really did an incredible job here. I really love what he did, and this definitely has potential to be one of J.K. Simmons' best roles in recent memory because he absolutely killed it here. Now, as far as all the other characters go, I can't really say too much about them. Harry Lloyd, I really liked as Peter. I liked how secretive he's being towards Howard. There's clearly a lot of stuff that he knows that he doesn't want him to know, and their relationship is definitely very complex. I'm interested in seeing really where that does go. Olivia Williams, I can't say a lot about because other than that last scene, we didn't really get a lot of acting from her. Most of the episode, she was, of course, in the coma, so I can't really say too much about her. Who I really did love, though, was Serraiocco as Baldwin. This character is extremely intriguing because she's clearly an assassin from D1 who is, clearly executing people from D2. We don't really know why, though. Why is she going after these specific people? Why are they her targets? What is the means to this? Like, why is she really doing all this? I'm very intrigued to see where that does go, and she really did a great job. Really, everyone killed it in this premiere. I didn't really think there was anyone that wasn't good. I thought, honestly, everyone did do a really great job, and that is something I will absolutely give this show. Now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that is definitely another thing that really did stick out to me. Right off the bat, the tone of the show, I think, is perfect. I love the sci-fi, type psychological tone this really does have. I think it definitely is the right tone, and especially when it came to, some of the more dramatic moments. I mean, the fact that we're not given a lot of information, I think is one of the best parts of this entire premiere, and I think that's more due to the writing, but the tone as well. They really did keep a very consistent tone here, and that's something I definitely really did enjoy. But what really stuck out to me is the writing of this show, because like I said, I think one of the show's best, I think one of the show's best things about this premiere is the fact that we were very much kept out of the loop, and there is still a lot of stuff that we don't know, and that sort of uncharted territory is one of the most compelling things about this premiere. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about Dimension 2. There's a lot of things like, how did this all happen? Why have these two people, why is this the first time that two counterparts have ever met? Why has this never really gone down before? Why has Peter been keeping all this stuff from Howard? I mean, there's a lot of compelling stuff there. Also, what is D2 Howard keeping from D1 Howard? I mean, there's clearly some sort of big thing that he's hiding from him. I mean, it seemed like this is someone that Howard can trust, but we don't really know at this point. I'm interested in seeing really where that's going to go. I think all that definitely is very intriguing. But what I also really love about the show is the social commentary. The show clearly has a lot to say about humans in general and how, we all kind of go through the same type of routines, and we all, a lot of people who work in these sort of, very high uppity up jobs might not really know what they're doing. I think it's really has a lot to say about human behavior in general, and that's something I definitely really did love seeing, and I think that's definitely one of the most intriguing parts of this series. It's very similar to Man in the High Castle, the way it functions as like a what-if scenario. Like, what if this actually happened? What if in the Cold War we divided into two halves and, no one ever crossed, that specific section? I mean, it's very compelling. I'm very interested in seeing where that's going to go, and I think all of that's very interesting. And the mythology as well. There's still a lot of confusing mythology. There's a lot of stuff that we still don't really know. It's very different from other sci-fi things I've seen. I'm sure we've seen things like this before where, someone's come across an alternate version of themselves. Sure, we've seen that, but this show really takes it up a notch, and it takes into a very different direction, and that's something I'm definitely very interested in getting into, is what's really going on here. What is D2 Howard's real motive? Why did he go meet D1 Howard? Because the way Emily said it, it seemed much more like this was, Howard voluntarily going to see his D1 self. This wasn't that he was assigned or what actually happened. There's definitely something more going on. I'm very intrigued to see really where that does go. So all that stuff I thought was very intriguing. My only complaint on this episode isn't really a complaint anymore. in the beginning, I really was not sure how Howard would be able to work in this job for 30 years and never question anything, never get any sort of answers whatsoever. It seemed kind of implausible to me. Like, you're telling me this guy works in the same position for 30 years and never does anything, never asks for a raise. But once we got to the ending, once we met D2 Howard, I'm like, all right, now this makes sense. Because again, this is a much more quieter, just very bashful Howard. This guy's very patient, and he's a little too patient, I think. I think that really is his biggest weakness, is that he is so patient, and he is so passive. He's not willing to tell people no. He's not willing to yell at Eric for, basically keeping him from seeing his wife. He's not willing to do these things, and we can see that D2 Howard is really opening up this confidence in him that he really never had before, and that's something I'm definitely very interested in getting into. So, knowing that, now it's not really as much of a complaint. Other than that, I really can't think of too many complaints I have with the show. Also, the cinematography here is fantastic. I love the way both of the dimensions look. We got a very brief look at Dimension 2, but from what we saw, I really did like how different it looked. It's a lot more darker. It's a lot, different, and that's something I definitely really did like. And some of the stylistic choices I thought were really cool, or just something like how Howard was the only person on the bus that looked different, or something as simple as just seeing all the different businessmen in these positions, and Howard's a lot different from them. I thought that in general was very intriguing. There's a lot, or how he's kind of dwarfed by all these other people, and there's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff here. Again, things that were very subtle, but things that I definitely did notice, and the fact that they were all kind of dressed identically. I just thought in general that was very intriguing. I really do love the various, again, it has a lot to say about humans interaction, I think, and I think that's something that the show very much does get into, and I'm very interested in exploring as well. There's a lot of stuff to get into here. Also, some of the side characters, like Ulrich, I just didn't really care about. He seems more like just the kind of douchey director, and I'm hoping he's a lot more than that. I'm hoping he's not just this very uptight, sort of mustache-twirling villain. I don't know if he's gonna be the villain, but I just in general, something about him, I do not really like that character. I thought the score as well, I really do love the intro to this show. I think it's fantastic. The editing as well, I thought the pacing was fantastic here. I was never bored. I was into it pretty much the whole time. And that's really all I have to say when it comes to first episode. Like I said, I'm very impressed. I'm really looking forward to seeing where the rest of this show really does go. I think there's definitely a lot of potential with this show for sure. There's a lot of things that I'm really looking forward to. J.K. Simmons, like I said, I thought was perfectly casted. I think that the plot in general is very intriguing. The sort of metaphysical twists that this show does have, I really do love. The mythology is interesting. This definitely has potential to be one of the best new shows of the year for sure. And I'm definitely going to give the series premiere of Counterpart Season 1, Episode 1, The Crossing, in A-. So over, guys, for me, the series premiere of Counterpart. The most guys saw this episode overall. Left your thoughts on it. Like I said, I really did love this premiere overall. I'm very interested in seeing where the rest of the show does go. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.